You're watching Public Comment, Sean O'Connor's video diary vlog focusing on politics, culture, and self. Good day, folks. I know that's an Australian expression, I get it. However, I am a globalist, not a nationalist, so I do not believe that a country deserves a monopoly on things, certainly not expressions. I like the sound of good day, so I'm going to say good day until I want to say something else. There are two things I want to discuss with you today. First, I want to clarify my purpose for making these vlogs. You see, YouTube recommends that I work on a trailer to make this channel more enticing, so you and so many other people will want to subscribe. So I'm like a college student here who wants to get a 100% on his senior capstone thesis. So I'm trying to adhere to every little bit of seemingly reasonable advice that I stumble upon. It comes highly suggested that I explain to you my purpose, that I describe my content, the type of videos I produce, and what you can expect to get out of my channel. Well, this is a video diary. What does one get out of watching such a thing? In theory, greater knowledge of humanity, the human condition, the human experience, as artists, philosophers, readers, and scholars might say. Greater knowledge of, a record of what people in their deepest depths think and appear to be like. The way I look at it, someone has got to do the record keeping of the so-called soul searching of the individual's streaming consciousness or thoughts or mind, whatever you want yourself to call that phenomena, which is the inner life of the self. So I figure it's logical for me to do this because I am deeply, extraordinarily in love with uninhibited personal thoughts that seek clarity of meaning in life, because I believe it leads to greater universal understanding, thus facilitating a deepening empathy among us all. Actually, this even goes back to why when I was, specifically around when I was 18, why I first got so deeply passionate about poetry. That's what I thought I was doing at the time. Now, one source of inspiration I draw from very specifically is my favorite essayist, Michel de Montaigne. I know I've spoken to you about him before. I want to quote the back of my collection of his essays here because I like the way, whoever wrote it, I like the way they put it. They say that Montaigne discussed subjects as diverse as war horses and cannibals, poetry and politics, sex and religion, love and friendship, ecstasy and experience. But above all, Montaigne studied himself as a way of drawing out his own inner nature and that of men and women generally. Close quote. My goal is to follow in his footsteps. What if he had a video camera and was able to record what he was thinking instead of using exclusively his pen, that camera, and speaking right to it, for example? So I want to follow in his footsteps and explore humanity's inner nature within the medium of the video blog, which I believe is a most revolutionary form of self-expression. I believe it possesses an intense directness and intimacy that no other medium, at least for me, can provide. Moreover, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, video just hasn't been around that long, not longer than just over a century. So when you compare this to other artistic mediums, vlogging in particular, not just video, but vlogging, is radically new. And taking advantage of this radically new medium, I'd like these vlogs to, even more so than just being new as a medium, in themselves, I'd like them to somehow reflect a spirit of unconventionality married to logic, as I think all excellent innovation is. And since the medium of the vlog, as I said, is still in its early infancy, I just think this is the perfect time. And what I want to offer you is something, and I hope that you'll forgive me for the brief oncoming adjective storm here. I want you to offer something that is philosophical yet artistic, theoretical yet practical, intellectual yet emotionally open. I want to utter the opposite of a tweet. I mean, the opposite of fast-paced, short, off-the-cuff thoughts on this and that. Instead, I strive for depth and the fulfillment of an aspiration I've clung to since I was 18. I'm 33 now, for the record. And that has been to contribute to something culturally exciting, revolutionary, and which makes this world a better place. Some people that come to my mind when I think of examples, I've already mentioned Michel de Montaigne, also John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, Nietzsche, Van Gogh, Helen Keller, Dostoevsky, Kerouac, Ginsberg, Martin Luther King Jr., Marlon Brando, Bob Dylan, the Beatles, Ariana Huffington, Mark Zuckerberg, President Obama. These are not the only folks I have in mind, but I would hope they would give you a sense of the kind of person I aspire to be. So yesterday, I pledged to vote for a female candidate in the 2020 Democratic Party presidential primary. I'm sticking to it, by the way. But this generated a lot of discussion and debate on Facebook. So I want to delve into this deeper. I want to make some clarifications. I also want to point out, it turns out I was actually not alone in this point of view. I thought maybe I was, because I hadn't quite, this wasn't an opinion that I saw, that I read about on Twitter or in the Washington Post or on MSNBC and thought, oh, I'd be so cool if I said that. Actually, I thought maybe I was an outlier and not going to be liked. But I did discover this morning an article published by Vox, written by Matthew Yglesias. which was also calling for a woman president. I will certainly provide you a link to this article. I will cite it briefly a little bit later too. My friend William Scott Smith from West Texas, he deeply disagrees with me here and remarked that I, to use his words here, quote, blame gender in general for the fact that a woman has never been president of the United States. To be clear, I do not and never said that I, quote, blame gender for this problem. I do blame, unequivocally, misogyny and sexism, however. Sadly, I believe anti-woman thinking is quite all around us and is perhaps most evident in the anti-abortion laws emerging around us, especially the one in Alabama, which outlaws abortion almost entirely, even when the woman is raped or in cases of incest. Unless the procedure is going to save her life, it's completely outlawed. The way I've come to think about abortion, and this is something I've really put an extreme amount of thought into, as I understand it, ultimately, it is a woman's body. And I do think nature makes it, therefore, quite clear that a woman should be in charge of what goes on with respect to what she does about her pregnancy. One could ask, what about the body of a fetus, and what about if that fetus can live outside the womb? I think that's a fair question, I do. And my answer to this would be that, to the best of my thinking, you have to ask this: is a woman a slave to that which is still unborn and inside of her, in her body? Is she a slave to it? Metaphysically speaking, the answer seems to speak for itself. I wonder then if it would be fair possibly to suggest that constitutionally protected defined personhood should begin at birth. I would think, if we are contemplating from the point of view of moral theories, that the natural rights theory would speak to this, and properly applied would suggest this way of thinking. And now William Scott Smith also says, I am, again using his words here, quote, voting for a woman because she is a woman, close quote, which he adds is identity politics. Well, maybe it is identity politics. But that doesn't prove it's illogical or destructive politics. That would be quite another conversation to have. When someone expresses something with greater clarity now, then I do like to cite that person. So I'm going to cite someone else who I believe speaks to this issue better than I could. I'm going to cite Washington Post columnist Helene Olin. And I hope I've pronounced her name correctly. And this is what she asks and says, a little tiny snippet from her recently published opinion piece here. She says, what about a form of identity politics that goes mostly unrecognized and unacknowledged? A minority with power and money. White men, mostly wealthy, often religious or pretending to be so, which has controlled societal and political norms so effectively that when those left outside simply insist on their rights, they are viewed as angry, resentful, demanding, and divisive. When identity politics is practiced in such a way that it allows a small group to access and maintain power, it gets labeled as norms and treated simply as the way the world works. Close quotes. And to that I say a deep amen. Part of understanding well-being of the individual must include understanding the well-being the well-being of society, the individuals within that society. In a society that fails to value inclusiveness and diversity sufficiently, there is prejudice, bigotry, racism, sexism, classism, exploitation, elitism, unhealthy social trends run amok. And in the interest of improving society, and I want to speak figuratively here, cleaning up and purifying all of the air on this earth which we all breathe, I say we do need to ask, what actions can we take to bring more inclusiveness and diversity to our society, to our global community? Does that mean I'm voting for a woman simply because she's a woman? No. I'm voting for a woman because there are so many candidates, men and women, who are equally, in my estimation, qualified. Right? So among the men, for example, I think Beto O'Rourke, Julian Castro are qualified. Might even argue, though he wouldn't be my candidate of choice, that Joe Biden is qualified. But I think that Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris and Senator Gillibrand are also qualified. And so when we have this pool of so many qualified people, men and women, I believe that this complicates the usual criteria that we've used to determine who our candidate for president should be. And so I say we need to look to other criteria for how we elect a president and how we understand what it means to elect a president. As well, I would go so far as saying what we understand the role of the president to be. And I just want to put it out there for discussion versus this question also of what the presidency ought to be. For example, I really don't think that the president ought to have as much power as the president throughout the last half of a century or so has come to possess. Major intellectual publications from Foreign Affairs to the Washington Post have written about the excesses of power that the president has seized onto and the weakness of power within the Congress and how this imbalance has harmed America on various fronts. That's another conversation for another time. Based on where we are now, I like the way Matthew Yglesias put it in that Vox article. So back to that, a short quote from Mr. Yglesias. He says, quote, "One of the important ways electing a woman to the presidency would matter is by providing a role model. Role models make a large, quantifiable difference in life. Detailed empirical studies by the Equality of Opportunity Project show that girls who grow up in places where there are unusually large number of women inventors are unusually likely to grow up themselves as women inventors." Similarly, Iglesias talks about research where women who are elected statewide in office find more often women in that state run for the state legislature. With respect to the power of role modeling, by the way, and the power of images in the media, I certainly would refer you to research I cited in my essay on Native American writer Alyssa Washuta and her approach to bringing down stereotyping. So I do talk about that. There is a body of research on this topic, and I will send you a link to that. The bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, is this. In a pool of so many talented people of different sorts of demographic identifier points, when the leadership of this country, when the leadership position in this country has for so long excluded those folks who are also qualified, I think it is fair to say that it's time for us to open up that leadership position. To those who for so long have been denied it. I'm going to leave it there for today, folks, and I want to thank you so very much for your time. I also want to invite you to let me know what you think in the comments section below. And of course, they tell me I'm supposed to tell you, I hope you subscribe to my channel. I will chat with y'all tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.